She was only 7 when she left home for school that morning and vanished without a trace. No clues, no goodbye, just silence. 19 years later, her mother opens a college yearbook and finds her daughter's face staring back. Same eyes, same birthmark, same smile frozen in time. But the name under the photo? Completely different. What happened in those missing years? Who took her? And why was she hidden in plain sight all along? Before we dive in, where in the world are you watching from? The cold wind curled through the narrow streets of Milwaukee like a whisper from the past, quiet, persistent, and full of secrets. It was early October, and the sun had barely risen above the low rooftops, casting long shadows over sidewalks sprinkled with brittle leaves. The traffic lights blinked lazily between red and green as if the city itself wasn't quite awake. Somewhere, a radio played an old jazz tune that was barely louder than the rustling trees, the kind of sound that lingered in the air like perfume after someone has gone. A yellow school bus squeaked to a stop on Sycamore Avenue, its brakes sighing with exhaustion. Doors hissed open, but no one stepped out. No children waited. Karen Holloway stood by the window of her small kitchen, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug, her eyes locked on that corner for far too long. Even after all these years, she still checked that exact moment, 7:12 a.m., as if her daughter might appear out of thin air. 19 years, 19 autumns, 19 school buses that arrived and left empty. Emily was 7 when she vanished. A soft-spoken girl with strawberry blonde hair, a pink backpack, and a favorite blue scarf with little white stars. She had left home that morning for school. She never arrived. No witnesses, no camera footage, no signs of struggle. Just gone. The city rallied. Volunteers handed out flyers with her photo. Local shops posted signs. Karen and her then-husband Roger went on television, their faces drained, voices cracking, begging for help. If someone has her, just let her go, please. She's only 7, Karen had said between sobs, but nothing came. That night, it rained. Not the gentle kind, but the kind that seemed to punish the world. Karen never forgot the sound of that storm against the glass, as if the sky itself was trying to drown her grief. The case went cold and colder, until it froze into silence. Now, in this very kitchen, 19 years later, she still listened to the wind like it might tell her something. She had kept everything. The scarf. Her daughter's favorite stuffed bear, Mr. Buttons. The last note Emily ever scribbled, "Mommy, I love you bigger than the sky." It was folded neatly in a photo album under her bed, alongside newspaper clippings, reward flyers, and a small silver locket with a photo of both of them smiling. The sound of a mailbox snapping shut pulled her from the trance. She stepped outside. The air was sharp. On the porch, a thin stack of envelopes, bills, political flyers, and one thick envelope without a return address. Karen's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, a printed college yearbook page, and there, circled in red, was the face of a young woman, auburn hair, dimple on the left cheek, bright hazel eyes. It was Emily. At least, it looked exactly like her. A post-it note was stuck to the corner. 4 words, written in shaky black ink. "You were right. She's alive." Karen's knees buckled and the world dimmed. But she didn't drop the page. Her fingers tightened, knuckles white. Her heart pounded louder than the wind, because suddenly, after 19 years of screaming into the void, someone had finally whispered back. Karen Holloway kept her world small, not because she wanted to, but because life had taught her that wide-open spaces carried too many echoes. Echoes of the past. Echoes of laughter that once filled rooms, of a child's footsteps down the hallway, of a name once called out 1,000 times in every supermarket, schoolyard, and hospital waiting room. Now her world was her classroom, her small rented home, and the overgrown garden behind it, where nothing much ever grew. She taught English at Jefferson High School, a quiet campus tucked between Milwaukee's historic district and a freeway overpass. It wasn't glamorous, but she liked the rhythm of the school bell, the smell of books, the clatter of teenage chaos. It was structure, predictable, and she craved that. Her students knew her as Ms. Holloway, the teacher with kind eyes and tired hands. She always brought tea instead of coffee, corrected essays with green ink instead of red, and sometimes stared too long out the window when she thought no one noticed. They didn't know that when she parked her car each morning, she scanned every face in the crowd, that she still checked missing persons databases late at night, that her entire wardrobe was arranged in a system of dates, colors she wore on anniversaries, fabrics tied to memories. Karen had never remarried. She and Roger divorced 3 years after Emily vanished. He moved to Portland and opened a hardware store. They spoke rarely. He had a new wife now, a son. But in Karen's home, Emily's room remained untouched. Pink wallpaper with little clouds, a shelf of dolls, a tiny desk with crayons still in their box. The calendar on the wall read October 2006. She dusted the room weekly. Sometimes she sat on the bed and whispered stories. Once she read aloud a full chapter of Charlotte's Web through tears, not because she thought Emily could hear, but because she needed to believe someone could. She had learned to function, grocery shop, pay bills, teach. Smile when required, but she never lived, not really. Karen kept a private journal, the leather cracked and soft from years of handling. It was filled with fragments of dreams, strange coincidences, anonymous letters, and the nightmares that returned every fall. One entry, written just 3 weeks earlier, read, "I saw her again in the crowd, same hair, same walk." But the girl turned and smiled. Not Emily, just another shadow. She had always believed her daughter was still out there, not hope. Not delusion, just something deeper. A thread never cut. That's why when the yearbook photo arrived, something inside her didn't scream in shock. It trembled. It leaned forward. She placed the page inside a binder with trembling care, then sat in her living room chair, the same chair she had used every year on Emily's birthday. She stared at the photo until her eyes blurred. The name beneath the photo read, Madison Carter, Honors Program, Sociology, University of Illinois at Chicago. Class of 2024. Karen repeated the name aloud, once, twice. Then she whispered Emily's name. Somewhere in her chest, the two names collided. That night, Karen didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her fingers resting on the locket she had worn every day since 2005. She remembered the feel of Emily's little fingers wrapping around hers, the freckles on her nose, the way she used to hum when she colored. She opened her laptop, created a folder titled MC. Inside, she saved the yearbook image. Then searched for Madison Carter. There were a few matches, a scholarship mention, a public event listing, and one photo, taken from behind, of a girl walking across a university quad. Same hair, same build, same backpack style Emily had loved. Karen leaned closer, her breath caught. The girl had a small silver charm hanging from her backpack zipper, a butterfly, the exact shape of the brooch Emily wore the day she disappeared. The photo's caption was unhelpful. Campus Spring Tour. No date. No clear credit. Karen pressed her hand to the screen, and something inside her whispered, "Go." Karen hadn't set foot on a college campus in over 2 decades, but now she stood at the edge of the University of Illinois at Chicago, her hands buried in her coat pockets, staring across the open plaza like it was sacred ground. Students buzzed around her, hoodies, backpacks, earbuds, coffee cups, and not one of them knew that a mother had returned here to find her child. She clutched the printed yearbook photo inside her tote bag, folded, creased, circled in red. The butterfly charm still haunted her mind. Could it really be Emily? She had memorized every public photo she could find of Madison Carter over the past 48 hours. Only a handful existed, and none gave her clarity. One was a blurry group shot at a volunteer event. Another showed the back of a speaker's head at a student conference, captioned M. Carter. Wait, but the most recent, dated just 3 weeks ago, was from the university's official newsletter. Karen had zoomed in so far that the pixels fell apart, but one detail stayed clear. A mark behind the girl's right ear, a small birthmark. Karen knew that birthmark. Emily was born with it. She had kissed it every night at bedtime. Now she wasn't asking herself if it was her daughter. She was asking, how? Inside the admissions office, Karen introduced herself with a calm she didn't feel. Hi. My name is Karen Holloway. I'm hoping to speak to someone about your student records department. I believe I may be a relative of a student here, and I need to confirm her identity. The receptionist, a college junior with chipped nail polish and a skeptical smile, blinked. We don't give out that kind of information, ma'am. Privacy rules, you know? Karen nodded, already expecting it, but then she leaned in slightly. I understand. I'm not here to make trouble. But this might be a matter of someone's safety, or even a long-term missing persons case. That was enough to bring a second staff member over. Within minutes, she was in a small office with Dr. Leona Vasquez, the head of student affairs. Sharp, composed, early 60s. Karen slid the yearbook photo across the desk. Do you recognize her? Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, lips pressing into a tight line. Yes, that's Madison Carter, sociology honors, quiet, bright student. Why do you ask? Karen hesitated. Because I believe she might be my daughter, Emily Holloway. She vanished when she was 7. The silence between them thickened. Dr. Vasquez frowned, then sighed. I can't confirm or deny much without legal documentation. But she did arrive under unusual circumstances, transferred in during sophomore year, limited records. Her guardian signed all enrollment documents remotely. I've never met them in person. Her guardian? Dr. Vasquez hesitated again. A woman named Linda Carter claims to be her aunt, but there was something off. The student seemed distant, no family visits. She never mentioned parents. Karen's breath caught. She goes by Madison, but it might not be her real name, Dr. Vasquez added quietly. That evening, Karen sat alone in a cafe across the street from the campus, her tea going cold. Something was wrong. Not just the resemblance, not just the charm, not just the birthmark. There was a pattern forming beneath it all. Madison had no social media presence prior to 2020, no high school records accessible, no childhood photos. The trail began abruptly 2 years ago, like she had been created for college. Karen scribbled into her journal, "She didn't grow up, she appeared." She turned the page and circled the date Emily vanished, October 6, 2005, then circled Madison's recorded date of enrollment, October 6, 2020. 15 years to the day. Coincidence? Or something darker? 3 days later, Karen received a package on her doorstep. No return address. Inside, a cassette tape. No note. Just black plastic and a faded label. M. Karen's hands shook as she dug out her old tape player from the attic. It crackled, whined, then started to play. A girl's voice, faint, terrified, trying not to cry. "Mommy, I'm scared. The lady said not to talk loud. She said you wouldn't come, but I know you will. I know you—" The tape cut. Karen collapsed to her knees, gasping, that voice. She would know it anywhere. She played it again, and again, and again. The static couldn't hide what she heard. It was Emily, or someone trained to sound exactly like her. She called the Milwaukee police, sent them the tape, but the reply was ice cold. "We can't confirm voice identity from that alone, ma'am. It's also anonymous, unverifiable. Could be a hoax. Karen slammed the phone down. She returned to the binder, flipped to the yearbook photo, then to a printed class list with Madison's name. She circled 3 others. Her plan was forming. On campus, Karen waited outside the lecture hall Madison usually exited on Thursdays. She stayed half-hidden behind a newspaper dispenser, her heart pounding. And then, at exactly 2:05 p.m., the door opened. She stepped out. The girl, Madison, or Emily. Long auburn hair, denim jacket, butterfly charm on the zipper. She smiled at someone. The same lopsided grin Karen remembered. Karen took one step forward, then froze. The girl's eyes passed over her without recognition. Karen's mouth opened. Her voice failed. Madison turned, earphones in, and walked away. Karen didn't sleep that night. She played the tape again, watched old home videos, compared smiles, walks, mannerisms, and then, as she paused a VHS clip of Emily in the backyard wearing a pink jacket, she gasped. The butterfly brooch. It wasn't just similar. It was identical to Madison's. A custom-made design. Karen had ordered it from a local artisan, engraved on the back with 3 tiny letters, EMH. If Madison had it, it was Emily, unless someone else had it too. Karen dug through the attic and retrieved Emily's old jewelry box. It was still there, the original brooch. So how could Madison be wearing the same one? She zoomed in again on the charm photo, and this time she saw the edge of something on the side. A scratch. A dent. In the exact same place as the brooch Emily had dropped once onto the pavement at a gas station. It wasn't a copy. It was the original. She held both brooches up to the light. Identical. Except one had age and wear, and the other, Madison's, was newer, less faded. 2 copies of a one-of-a-kind object. Karen circled the word in her journal, impossible. Karen Holloway had never broken into a building before. But as she slipped through the side door of the campus archives at midnight, flashlight in hand and heart pounding like a war drum, she told herself, this wasn't a crime. This was rescue. 3 nights earlier, she had emailed Dr. Vasquez again, requesting permission to review Madison Carter's transfer paperwork, an appeal based on a mother's plea. The response had come politely and firmly. All records are sealed per FERPA law. Without a court order, we cannot disclose further information. But Karen had seen things, details that didn't match, and one name that kept coming up, Margaret Dawes. A quiet librarian who worked with student archives and, according to a faded staff photo Karen found online, had once lived in the same Milwaukee neighborhood where Emily vanished. She now worked nights. Karen waited until closing, watched from a nearby bench, and saw Margaret leave at exactly 9:47 p.m. Now she stood inside the locked file room, surrounded by decades of dusty records. It smelled of paper, rust, and something older, like forgotten time. She opened the transfer cabinet marked C. Carter, Madison, her file was there. Thick, heavier than expected. Inside, forged documents, 2 birth certificates, one from Illinois, one from Oregon. Vaccination records with mismatched clinic stamps. A letter of guardianship from Linda Carter, signed in 2016, but notarized by someone whose license expired in 2014. And then, the final page, a letter from a foster agency, dated 2010, referencing a Jane Doe found in rural Ohio, with no fingerprints in the system, aged around 12, and sent to live with a trusted private guardian. Karen dropped the page. Jane Doe, no history, no prints, just delivered to a private address, and listed physical features, hazel eyes, auburn hair, scar under left knee, birthmark behind the right ear. Karen covered her mouth, shaking. It wasn't just Madison. It was Emily. She had been renamed relocated, and someone made sure she never knew. The next morning, Karen sat across from Paul Jensen, the now retired detective who had worked her daughter's case. He lived in a modest condo outside Racine, Wisconsin. She had called him after nearly 2 decades of silence, and to her surprise, he answered with a quiet, "I've been waiting for this call." Jensen looked older, gray-stubbled, hunched, a cane resting by his chair, but his eyes hadn't dulled. He poured coffee. "Black, no sugar. I remember every case I couldn't solve, but yours I never forgot." Karen slid the yearbook photo across the table, then the foster agency record, then the butterfly brooch. Jensen studied each item in silence. Then he said, "There was a woman. We suspected her. Briefly. A nurse at a private clinic near Madison. She disappeared a week after Emily did. Name was Sandra Carter." Karen's stomach flipped. "Carter," he nodded. "Could be a connection. We had nothing solid. No body, no calls, no ransom. She just quit, moved out of state." Karen whispered, "Could she be Linda Carter now?" Jensen didn't answer, but he stood, grabbed an old folder from a locked cabinet. Inside, dozens of photos, notes. One picture of a car outside the school Emily disappeared from. A Honda Civic, dusty blue, license plate unreadable. The photo taken by a gas station security camera across the street. At 7:11 a.m., 1 minute before the bus arrived. Karen pointed. "That's the gas station where she dropped the brooch, I remember." Jensen's eyes narrowed. "Then we're not chasing ghosts anymore. We're chasing a trail." They drove together to the address listed in the foster record. A rural house in western Indiana, now abandoned. Paint peeling, curtains drawn, fence collapsed. Inside, dust coated everything, except the upstairs room. There they found a small bed, a journal, and a music box. The journal had no name, just entries signed M. Most were incoherent, childish, but one stood out. "Sometimes I feel like I came from someone else's dream. I don't remember before this place, only the sound of the rain, a red backpack, a woman who said my name was Madison." Karen sank to the floor. Emily remembered, not everything, but fragments, enough to know her identity had been stripped. Back in Milwaukee, Karen stood in Emily's old room for the first time in days. She opened the closet. On the top shelf was a sealed plastic bin she hadn't touched in years. Inside, Emily's school journals, crayon drawings, one with 3 butterflies, all labeled Me, Mommy, Daddy. She traced the image with her fingertip. Her voice shook. "I'm coming, baby, I'm coming." Paul Jensen continued digging. Using an old contact in Ohio, he got access to a hidden file from a closed adoption agency, Harvest Home Services, now defunct, shut down in 2011 for ethics violations. But one of their board members, Sandra Carter, not just a nurse, a co-founder. Karen stared at the printed email. Sandra Carter, Linda Carter. She changed her name to hide her connection to the agency. She took Emily and gave her a new identity. Jensen nodded. She didn't steal her for ransom. She wanted a daughter, and she used the system she helped create to vanish her. Karen returned to campus one last time. She waited until Madison left class. This time, she didn't hide. She stepped forward. "Excuse me, Madison?" The girl turned. "Yes?" Karen tried to smile. "Sorry to bother you. I thought you looked familiar. You remind me of someone." Madison smiled politely. "Happens a lot. I guess I have one of those faces." Karen nodded, blinking back tears. "Do you mind if I ask, do you remember much from when you were little, before college?" Madison paused. Something flickered behind her eyes. "Not really. I was told I was adopted kind of late. I think I was 10 or 11. My aunt raised me after that. She said my real family passed away in a car crash, but I don't remember it, just sounds. And dreams." Rain? Karen asked softly. Madison's face shifted. Yeah. Red backpack. The girl froze. And then, quietly, How do you know that? Karen's voice trembled. Because I bought it for you. Madison's lips parted. Her eyes widened. She stumbled a step back. I don't... What are you saying? Karen reached into her bag. Slowly. Carefully. She pulled out the brooch, the original. Madison stared. Then at the one on her own zipper. 2 identical butterflies, one worn, one newer, both impossibly real, and then her hands began to shake. I don't understand. You will, Karen whispered. I promise. Madison didn't run. She didn't scream. She just stood there. For a full 10 seconds after Karen showed her the brooch, the girl stared at it like it was radioactive. Her eyes darted between the one on her own bag and the older tarnished twin in Karen's hand. Her breath caught, then came in rapid, shallow waves. I don't understand. Karen didn't push. Her voice remained soft. You wore this the day you disappeared. It was a gift from me. I kept it all these years. I didn't even know a second one existed until I saw you. Madison stepped back, her voice cracking. No, you're wrong. My aunt gave me this. Karen nodded. I believe that's what she told you. But why would she lie? She raised me. She said my parents died, that I was lucky to survive the crash, that I had a brain injury, and that's why I don't remember. Karen blinked. Did she ever show you any proof? Madison hesitated. Karen pressed further gently. A birth certificate, medical reports, photos of the accident, a police report? Madison said nothing. I'm not here to ruin your life, Karen said. I'm here to give you your life back. Madison looked away. You don't know what you're doing. I know what I lost, Karen whispered, and I know who took you. That night, Madison didn't go home to Linda Carter. She checked into a motel, alone. She didn't answer Karen's texts, but she didn't block the number either. And the next morning, she showed up outside Paul Jensen's condo, trembling. I don't know what's real anymore, she told him, but I need help. Jensen welcomed her inside, no questions asked. And once Karen arrived, they told her everything, step by step. The photo, the tape, the records, the woman known as Sandra Carter. Madison sat through it all without speaking, but something changed in her eyes when Karen showed her one last thing, a drawing, crayon, old, worn, 3 butterflies, me, Mommy, Daddy. Madison's hands hovered over it. I used to draw this in my room, but I didn't know why. Karen's voice broke. Because you remembered, deep down. Madison closed her eyes. I think I always knew. They filed an official report the next day. The Milwaukee police reopened the case, and Sandra Carter, a.k.a. Linda Carter, was tracked to a quiet suburb in Iowa, living under a different name, Diane Larson. When agents arrived, she didn't deny anything, but her story was different. She claimed she had been contacted in 2005 by someone inside the foster system, someone who said a lost girl with no identification had been found and would never be claimed, that she could adopt her unofficially for a price. She claimed she didn't kidnap Emily herself. She said the girl was given to her, but she had one rule. You must never tell her who she really is. She belongs to no one. Jensen demanded names. She refused, then whispered one thing. Check the school files. The counselor, he knew. And just like that, the case bent again. Back in Milwaukee, Jensen dug into old records. Emily's elementary school had a guidance counselor in 2005 named Mark Danning. Clean record. Never investigated. But Jensen found something buried in a sealed complaint from years ago. Danning had been accused of falsifying records for a student that didn't exist, The claim never stuck. And then one more puzzle piece fell into place. A withdrawal form signed October 6, 2005, Emily Holloway's last day. It stated she had transferred to a new school out of state, signed by Mark Danning, countersigned by Sandra Carter. It was the final confirmation. The school helped make her disappear. The revelation shattered everything. Karen stared at the form, eyes blurred with tears. They erased her from the system. They made it look official. Jensen's voice was like gravel. They created the perfect loophole. No ransom, no police, just paperwork. But the final blow came days later, when Madison remembered something new. She had a recurring dream, a sound, a smell, wet leaves, a humming tune. Karen asked her to hum it. Madison did. Karen gasped. It was the lullaby she used to sing every night, wordless, soft, hers alone. Madison stopped. I don't know how I know it, but I always have. And that's when Karen knew, with every cell in her body, this wasn't just about DNA or birthmarks or butterflies. It was about a bond that refused to die. They submitted to a DNA test. It took 2 weeks. In that time, Karen and Madison met almost daily at parks, cafes, Jensen's condo. They talked carefully, like building a fragile bridge over a chasm of stolen years. Madison asked about her childhood, her favorite toys, the dog they used to have. Karen told her everything. Some things sparked recognition, others didn't. But the laughter, that was new and real. The results came in a plain envelope. Karen opened it with trembling hands. The words hit like thunder. Probability of maternity, 99.99998%. Emily Holloway had been found, but she didn't cry. She just leaned forward, wrapped her arms around Madison, and whispered, "Welcome home." Jensen drove to Iowa himself. Linda Carter, Sandra, refused to speak again. But on his way out, she said something chilling. "You think I'm the only one? Check the files. Look for the others." He froze. "What others?" She only smiled, and Jensen realized Emily wasn't the only child stolen that way. There were more. The day Emily Holloway officially changed her name back, it rained. Not a storm, but a soft, persistent drizzle that turned the sidewalk silver and the city quiet, as if Milwaukee itself held its breath for her return. The courtroom was nearly empty, just Karen, Paul Jensen, and a representative from Child Advocacy Services. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and soft eyes, looked over the petition one last time, then asked the girl in front of her a simple question. "Is this what you want?" Emily, no longer Madison, nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice didn't shake. It was calm, measured, like she'd been waiting to say it her entire life. "I am Emily Marie Holloway." Karen covered her mouth. Her chest crumbled from the inside out. They didn't go out to celebrate. They went home, not to Karen's house, not yet, but to the old neighborhood, the one Emily had grown up in. It was mostly the same. A few new houses, fewer trees. The park swing had been replaced with a plastic one, brighter but somehow less magical. Emily stood near the corner where the school bus had once stopped. She didn't speak. Karen came beside her and said, "You were here, right here, that morning." Emily nodded. "I keep thinking if I just stand still long enough, I'll remember something, but it doesn't come. You don't have to force it. I want to. I want to know who I was." Karen whispered, "You were loved." Emily blinked back tears. "Am I still?" Karen reached out, held her hand, more than ever. The first night Emily slept at Karen's home, the clock in the hallway ticked louder than usual. She wandered the living room, stopped at the photos, her baby pictures, school portraits. One photo of her and Karen, faces pressed close, sunlight pouring between them like a memory trying to survive. She touched it gently. Then she opened the door to her old bedroom. Karen had left it untouched, the wallpaper with clouds, the shelf of dolls, the crayon box on the tiny desk. It was frozen in time, as if 7-year-old Emily might walk back in at any moment and ask for cereal. She stepped inside, sat on the bed, picked up the stuffed bear, Mr. Buttons. It still smelled faintly of childhood. Emily lay back and stared at the ceiling. The silence wasn't empty. It was whole. And for the first time in 19 years, she closed her eyes without fear. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Trauma doesn't dissolve with truth. It lingers. Emily had nightmares. Karen had panic attacks. Some days they spoke openly. Others they avoided each other like strangers learning to speak again. But Jensen kept close. He visited twice a week, asked questions, shared old notes, helped Emily piece together timelines, names, symbols. She remembered more each time. A woman's voice saying, "Your mother gave you away." A locked door, rain, books without covers, and once, a hospital hallway painted yellow. That detail broke everything wide open. Jensen cross-referenced private facilities near the place Emily had been found, in Ohio. Only one matched the time, staff list, and color of the hallway, Willowbrook Psychiatric Center, now closed, but once notorious for housing vulnerable minors without guardians. Records showed that a nurse named Sandra Carter worked there briefly in 2006. No official resignation, just a disappearance. Emily had been hidden there, drugged, held until she was old enough to forget. Karen collapsed when she heard. "They stole her memory," she whispered. "They didn't just take her, they rewrote her." But the final crack came in the form of a letter, delivered by hand. No envelope, left at Jensen's doorstep. Typed, no signature. "There are at least 5 more. Same method, same foster cover. You found one. Now prove the rest." Attached, a list of first names, years, and school IDs. The handwriting at the bottom was the only part handwritten. It read, "You were never supposed to find her." Jensen brought it to Karen and Emily. Karen's hand trembled as she read the note. Emily said nothing for a long time. Then she whispered, "I want to help find the others." Karen looked at her. "You don't have to." "But I need to." The story made the news. It started small, local headlines, then state, then national. Woman finds daughter 19 years after disappearance in college yearbook. New clues suggest organized disappearances across foster system. Hidden identities, broken families, and the fight for truth. Karen was interviewed. So why Emily, so why Jensen, but no one ever found Sandra Carter again. She vanished, completely, as if her final disappearance had been planned. Emily started therapy. She also began journaling again. Her own words, not what someone told her to write. She wrote letters to herself, to Karen, to Jensen, to her 7-year-old self. And then one day she wrote this sentence and folded the paper. "I am not what they made me forget. I am what I choose to remember." She placed it inside the original butterfly brooch. Karen helped her pin it to her new backpack. The past was still there, but so era the future. On a chilly morning in early October, exactly 20 years after Emily Holloway disappeared, a woman stood alone on Sycamore Avenue. She wore a navy coat, hands tucked in her pockets, her eyes fixed on the corner where the school bus still made its morning stop. But this time, she wasn't alone. Emily stood beside her, older now, stronger, and whole. They didn't speak at first, just listened, to the wind rustling the trees, to the hum of a nearby lawnmower, to the screech of the brakes as the bus came to its usual halt. No one stepped out. It moved on, and Karen smiled softly. "It still feels the same, like time stopped here." "What?" Emily nodded. "But it didn't." Karen glanced over. "No, it didn't." They walked the block in silence, passing neighbors, dogs on leashes, rusted mailboxes. Life had continued all these years. But for Karen, this was the first time she had walked that street without a hole in her chest. Later that afternoon, Karen opened a box in her attic, one she had sealed nearly 2 decades ago. Inside, Emily's old school records, drawings, a videotape labeled Emily First Grade, and the flyer, weathered and yellowed, that once covered every telephone pole in Milwaukee. Missing Emily Holloway, age 7. Karen held it up to the sunlight. Then quietly, gently, she folded it and placed it back. She didn't need it anymore. The face was no longer missing. It was downstairs in her kitchen, making tea. Emily enrolled in night classes, psychology, trauma studies, and juvenile law. She wanted to work with children who had gone through what she had, or worse. She also volunteered at a missing persons support group once a week. She didn't speak at first, but eventually she stood up and said, "I was gone for 19 years, but someone never gave up on me, so I won't give up on anyone else." Silence filled the room, then quiet tears, and something even rarer, hope. Paul Jensen passed away the following spring, peacefully, in his sleep. In his will, he left a single letter addressed to Emily. "You were the one case that kept me up at night. Now you're the one that lets me sleep in peace. Find the others, shine the light, and never let them shut it off again." She cried reading it, then pinned his badge number to her desk, and got to work. They never caught everyone involved, but they uncovered enough. 3 more children from similar transfers were found and reconnected with their families. 2 others had vanished too long ago to trace. Emily met each survivor, not as a symbol, but as a sister. A reminder that they were not alone. Her story appeared in a book, then a documentary, then a congressional hearing. But she never told the media everything. Some parts she kept only for herself and Karen, like the tune she hummed when she couldn't sleep, or the way the rain still made her stop and breathe. One day Karen found her standing at the backyard fence, holding Mr. Buttons in one hand, the brooch in the other. "You okay?" she asked. Emily nodded. "I'm thinking." "About what?" "About how everything I lost somehow led me back to where I started, just different." Karen smiled. "Different doesn't mean worse." "No," Emily whispered. "Sometimes it means stronger." They repainted the room, not to erase the past, but to make space for the future, sky blue, with golden butterflies. And above the bed they framed a single photo. Karen and Emily, arms wrapped around each other, faces pressed close. No longer frozen in time, but alive. And on the bottom corner of that frame, engraved into the wood, were 7 words. She was never missing, just hidden deep.